Hey everyone, thank you for coming. I guess it was hard yesterday after all the parties, so it was the same for me too. So let's get started. Mounir, I'm the founder of Paraswap. It's a liquidity aggregator on Ethereum blockchain, Polygon, BSC, and others. Going to talk to you today about the future of liquidity aggregation and how I think it's going to evolve. Just to start, let's kind of define layers for DeFi protocols. It's oversimplified, but at least it gives a visibility on how they are, I mean, they interact with each other. So in general, we have the assets layer, where they have the tokens, ETH, and so on. We have what you call the capital aggregators, which are like the AMMs, the lending protocols, and others. And then on top of those, they are what we call the service aggregators, like Paraswap, Zerion, Instadapp, and Argent, and so on. Where is this coming from? It's coming from Ben Thompson aggregation theory that's kind of tries to create a literature behind aggregation in the context of Web 2.0. And here we try to find parallels in Web 3.0. So how Ben Thompson, or like the aggregation theory, defines aggregators are those who have those three characteristics. So first, they have direct relationships with users. You don't need anyone to use the service. In Web 2.0, that can be any service that you know, like Google, Facebook, Yahoo, or whatever. In DeFi, it will be a Uniswap. Like nobody needs the permission or a middleman to use Uniswap. You just use Uniswap through their UI or any alternative UI. There is what you call zero marginal cost for serving users. Well, the information or the product is served through internet. There is no physical way of delivering, or there is no cost of delivering the product. So that goes for Web 2.0, but it goes even more for Web 3.0, because Web 2.0, they still have a cost of running servers, of the logistics, and so on. In Web 3.0, it doesn't make any difference to have one user and 1 million users, because it's simply code running on the blockchain and not operated by the protocol or by the dApp. And what he called also is demand-driven multi-sided networks with decreasing acquisition costs, which means there are, well, we're talking about network effects here, and the cost of acquisition decreases over time. Like once we have a user, and we have the other user. For instance, in Facebook, we'll have one user with their friends, which is going to bring other friends, and so on and so forth. And in AMM, on a Uniswap, for instance, we will have a liquidity provider with a trader. The more traders, the more liquidity providers, and so on. It's a virtuous cycle. And I mean, in Web 2.0, like companies, they don't even need, or protocols don't even need to do acquisition per se. But here, the idea is to talk about the organic side of acquiring users, which means users would acquire themselves other users. And there are also levels for aggregators. And here, we'll try to see if there are Web 3.0s that can fit in the first place here. So there are what they call supply acquisition, which means those aggregators, they have to literally acquire the supply side in order to serve the demand side. Like, for instance, Netflix. They will buy movies or acquire movies in order to serve their users. And the more movies they buy, the more users they have, the better they will finance themselves to buy better movies. And their users will be happier and will come back, it will bring other users and so on. They are still an aggregator, like they fit all those three characteristics, but they still have a very significant cost for acquiring the supply side. We have something that is close by, the level 2, which there is no really ownership of the supply, but it comes at a cost. For instance, Uber, they have drivers. They're not their drivers, they don't own the drivers, but there is an onboarding cost for having those drivers. But they have direct relationships with the users. So that's an example. And I can't think of a DeFi protocol fitting here, definitely not in the first one. And the second one, maybe some CeFi project, like Changely, for instance. The third level is what you call zero cost supply, which means there is no cost for supply, no cost for demand. And that can be, for instance, a social network, for instance. It can be a Google, for instance, where the supply is, say it's coming from internet. I mean, Google is tracking websites, and the users are coming to Google. But that can be also any a liquidity protocol or any DeFi protocol where there is no cost of having the supply, no cost of having the demand, like an AMM where users would supply liquidity and other users will trade. So I think DeFi fits more on the level 3. And finally, there is a third one that I try to think and see if there is a mapping we can have here, is in what they call super aggregators. And those are obviously the Facebooks, the Googles, and so on, who they have users and suppliers, but they have a third party, which is called advertisers, and those are the customers at the end, per se, because those are the ones that monetize, like to bring monetization to the company. I can't think of any Web 3.0 that is a super aggregator, but I think mostly we are on the level 3 in most of the cases. Maybe some in level 2. So aggregation also exists in traditional finance. People call it SOR, but also in DeFi, people call it SOR. It's just a technique that is used. So SOR stands for smart order routing. It's used a lot in the Forex markets to simply beat the market price, like deliver a price that is better than the markets. The use cases are more complex than what we have right now in DeFi. Well, we can get into more details, but it's something that is very highly used in TradeFi. The big difference is that, we will see some detail later, is that this kind of aggregators, if we classify it as an aggregator, then it will come to defining the user, is not accessible to anyone, as we're used to in DeFi. It exists a lot in CeFi as well. There are some big companies like Tagomy that was acquired by Coinbase. It's something very common in CeFi. And also definitely in DeFi. So this is also, we are one of the aggregators in DeFi. But the key difference with TradeFi, we won't even get into too much detail, is that in CeFi and DeFi, anyone can have access to, maybe with different levels, but still. But in TradeFi, only brokers in certain category of users can have access to aggregation. Let's focus more on CeFi versus DeFi, I mean not TradeFi. Today, the big advantage that CeFi has is serving or giving users more options. Like if I go to Binance or Coinbase, I can trade Bitcoin, XRP, whatever is not Ethereum, but I cannot do that. I have to stay on a single blockchain each time if I go to DeFi, like Ethereum, Polygon, and so on. But the thing that DeFi is missing is what you call atomicity. So if there is an aggregation service like Paraswap, for instance, running on CeFi, it cannot guarantee me as a user that I will have that amount, like I'm saying 1 ETH to 2,000 DAI. I need to be sure to either receive 2,000 DAI or revert and get back my 1 ETH. That's not possible in CeFi because they will have buyers and sellers. The buyers already bought my ETH and gave me less than 2,000 DAI. So if I want to do the opposite way, I will end up with less ETH, maybe more, but most of the cases I will end up with less ETH. In DeFi, at least on smart contract platforms, I will end up exactly with what I spent, maybe less, little bits of gas, and that's what you call the atomicity. Now, how will that look like in layer 2? Well, I think it's going to be even better because there will be cheaper transactions, less fees. So I think those, I would say, good things we have right now are going to be better. But new complex use cases are going to be introduced because now we can do maybe high-frequency trading. We can do more order books. We can do like a Binance or a Coinbase use case. We can do it on-chain, on layer 2s. That is not possible, not really feasible on layer 2s. So which means the complexity, it's going to grow, but the possibilities are going to stay the same. But the question is, how will aggregation, like liquidity aggregation, look like in cross-chain? And that's where we are going to. Right now, we are already on a layer 2, or like entering the layer 2 normalization, where it becomes normal to run on layer 2. I think the next steps definitely is going cross-chain, and it's still in early stages. The problem with going cross-chain is we start to touch the same problems we have in CeFi. So if I have, say, an ETH on Ethereum, and I want my DAI on Polygon, or well, not Polygon, sorry, on Starknet or ZK Sync, well, it's more complex than that. It's not one transaction. Those are multi-transactions, 2 or at least 3 transactions. And this is breaking this atomicity, or like this guarantee that the blockchain, the native blockchain can give me. So there needs to be other ways, but still there is no way to be 100% sure that's, or to guarantee this atomicity, because we simply broke what you call composability in DeFi. So there will be more complex products that will be built on top of current exchanges. And the question is now, will the current aggregators stay aggregators? I think it depends, because in my opinion, a Uniswap in the future will be a pure backend, and other user-facing products or other trader-facing products will run on top of all of those, and what they will leverage is not necessarily this supply and the demand side of those. What they will leverage is the algorithms that these protocols are using, like the complexity that is built, or the possibilities that it allows for those protocols to use of using. And the future aggregators, maybe they exist, maybe they will exist in the future. And I think this will look like wallets and any user-facing app, like a UI or even an API. We can classify it as a trader or developer facing products. And Balancer and Uniswap and so on will stay purely on the back end, as right now we have a financial infrastructure that is obsolete, and DeFi would replace that infrastructure and allow new category of aggregators to emerge. Thank you for your attention. That was my talk. Do you guys have any question?
Yeah, it's Q&A time.
Well, thank you for the talk. So you say that at the end, Paraswap gonna be the user interface. So at the end, gonna be like the future fintech companies. So they're gonna be connected. You're gonna be connected to the fintech. It won't be Uniswap connected to fintech. Gonna be Paraswap, in this case, connected to fintech companies. Or
yeah. Yeah, it can be also a Revolut using DeFi protocols as a backend as well, if they are serving crypto, even maybe non-crypto assets. In Paraswap right now, you can see it as the user interface, but you can see it also as the backend behind Paraswap, and the same thing for Uniswap. There is Uniswap.exchange that is the UI that is definitely an aggregator right now and can become an aggregator in the future. But the Uniswap as a protocol is a pure infrastructure, and that I think what Uniswap will become in the future. Well, thank you.